Hi, David back. This week, we're resuming with the podcast episode from last week on private transactions. If you missed last week, you'll want to go back and catch it. This week, we're going into some details on some particular private transactions that we've put together in the last few months, the ins and outs, why we did that, what the motivation was, and how it was a win-win for both parties. I think you'll really enjoy this particular podcast. Jump in. I'll talk to you soon. I think your order is absolutely correct. As you said, the economics comes way down the list. All the other criteria or considerations need to be looked at in advance, and that's where people get tangled up. I think many times they come across, or someone sends them something, or they hear about something, and they want to jump into the mix of it too early. And before assessing, really, does this merit an opportunity?
Does it even make sense?
It doesn't even make sense. And that's, yeah. And this is just something like, well, you just gain experience over time with this, but that's why you need somebody on your team. If you're going to be involved in some kind of a private transaction, yeah, you've got to have somebody there by your side, preferably someone like Larry or someone who has this kind of experience to walk you through it. Now, you do enough of these things and you'll develop kind of a gut for it, right? Yeah. I mean, it just kind of happens, just like our doctors, after they've practiced enough years, they can do a pretty quick diagnosis and assessment pretty quickly, to see, well, where do I go next with testing, which is part of underwriting, right? So a lot of similarities here with what you're doing. Yeah.
And it's funny. So on this particular one that I just mentioned yesterday and today, so we do two things on the underwriting side. Obviously you're very familiar with IRCs, the IRC opinions that we do, Investment Review Committee. For freedomfounders, and that's sort of general terms. It's specific. It goes to all the members so that they can review and so forth, right? We also do something very similar to that, which is called investment review opinion. What I don't do, I stop short in an IRC because I'm not making a decision or an opinion that says this is worth doing or this makes sense to do. I just say, here it is. Is it market clearing economically? Is it market clearing structurally? Is it sound legally? Okay, so there it is. And this is what it looks like. In an IRO, I go further than that and say, therefore, based on all of that, blah, 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 and I give all the attributes of it. And I actually form an opinion as to whether at the end of the day, there is a supportable thesis that just makes sense. And that's really the language that I use, David. And it just said, but does it make sense to invest in based upon these particular considerations? So all of that comes from the underwriting. So let's talk about this. Was a particular one that I know you are familiar with because it's a Freedom Founders transaction, which was a unit investment trust. And this was a group of individuals that were partners, and they wanted to buy a parcel of property and to be able to entitle it for the purpose of building build to rent units on it. And it was intended to be a bridge loan, and it was so therefore for that reason it was 180 days, and it was a $2.5 million loan. At a very, very nice interest rate. I think I said it there. It is 18% interest rate, but it was a relatively short-term loan. It eventually went from 180 days up to I think it was an additional, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 60 days, 30 days, something like that. I think it was like 60 or 90 days. So there was an additional extension fee to be paid on that, and so forth. And so on that, the documents which we took the secured promissory note, mortgage and security agreement on the property. We did personal guarantee of the primary material members of the borrower. And then we did a collateral assignment. And if you'll notice, it's a very common thing that you're going to see across the board, because when I've got an LLC as the actual title holder, obviously, I want that LLC as a borrower, but I also want the extra redundant security of getting a collateral assignment of their membership interests so that I have both the possibility on behalf of my client, or in some cases myself, I have the additional security over and above a mortgage on the property that I can actually do a replevin action against the collateral assignment, against the membership interests. which are actually easier to do than a foreclosure. Plus, it gives me everything. It gives me everything on top of it. Now, the advantage, well, if that's the case, why foreclose? Why get a mortgage on the property? Well, number one, you don't want it sold out from under you. And secondly, one aspect of the difference between the membership interest and the mortgage on property is that a foreclosure wipes out everything else. So in the event that you have other types of liens and claims and things like that, your best position is really in a foreclosure. When I take an assignment of the membership interest, I get the membership interest, but I also get any claims that the company has against it.
Mhm.
So they operate complementary, and that's what I meant by overlapping security, if you will.
Belt, kind of belt and suspenders, right?
Yeah, belt and suspenders indeed. So this turned out to be sensational. The reason I used a unit investment trust in this case is because I think there were about 8 or 9 individual investors. So rather than trying, it's clunky to use a partnership agreement. So the best way to do it in this case was a unit investment trust. It had one trustee. All of the members were even undisclosed to each other. They didn't know who they were. They were just beneficiaries. The only one who knew who I did, and the only other one was the trustee.
Right.
And it turned out to be a really appropriate structure. So that was a wonderful one. And you can bet that when you get that type of whatever it was, 9-month transaction at 18% interest plus some extension fees, that you have very happy campers on both sides.
So some people might wonder, well, goodness sakes, who's going to borrow in this environment of still low interest rates at 18%? So I want people to understand that many times these private transactions are to allow the operator to gain initial control of the value add opportunity. In this case, it was going to be, build to rent. So you have to gain, in this case, the operators need to gain control by acquiring this land that was going to be later developed. Before they can actually go to the next step, they need to get like the land entitled, and there's a lot of steps to take. So they're not going to be paying 18% forever. In other words, as you said, this was initially 6 months. It went to maybe 8 months. That's very doable. In terms of the overall long-term picture they have in mind. They'll get their interest rate back down again when they go to the next takeout lender, if you will, longer-term lender, or next phase of their development. So I just want to make sure people say, well, where do you get these 18%? Well, they don't just pop up, but again, there's purposes in the marketplace where these opportunities come up and they work on both sides.
Yeah, this happened to be an 18% as a private transaction, but also recognize it was land. It was development land, and they needed to be able to get their entitlements. And they were on horseback to get their entitlements. But, try taking that to a bank.
No, not going to happen.
You take that to a bank, it's a forget about it. I mean, the LTV, it's not even a question of LTV for raw land, unentitled raw land. Forget about it. The bank's just going to turn that one down left and right. That's why there are so many syndications that I do, primarily for the land developers in the single family residential marketplace, because getting property entitled is a process, and it's an awful lot of acreage that you have to put under contract in order to do that. So what do you use? You use syndications, but you use an awful lot of private capital in the process. This was an individual private lending deal, and I selected these obviously because it's this is a Freedom Founders, Dr. David Phelps podcast. So here's another one, which was an individual private lending deal. And this one, unlike the unit investment trust, was within the context of something that was available. I forgot exactly what this was. I think this might have been 250,000, 300,000, something in that area. And what he wanted to do is it was for the purpose of buying a distressed single family. And I say multifamily, but I think it was just several units. Maybe it might've been a quad or something of that nature, and to rehab it and then be able to eventually pursue a liquidity event. So we did exactly the same thing. We did a secured promissory note, mortgage and security agreement. We got the personal guarantee of members, and then the collateral assignment of the membership interest and borrower executed by the borrower's members. One thing that I forgot to put in here, David, is that what we also got was cross collateralization. Because of the fact that there was a real rehab that had to be done on the property, I wasn't satisfied that it would maintain, it would retain, it would create the value until that rehab occurred.
Right.
So there was another piece of property that I took a mortgage on, or I took a mortgage on behalf of the client. We took another a mortgage on another piece of property that was fully functional and was already in commerce and didn't need to be rehabbed. So again, there was a redundancy factor that came from not only a mortgage on this property, but also the personal guarantee, a collateral assignment of the membership interest. And on top of that, there was a cross-collateralized mortgage on another piece of property.
Well, as you said, very important when you're the lender on a property that's going through a sizable renovation. There's a period of time where the value of the property acquisition is actually going to be lowered by the time they go through and gut it and tear it apart before they start building it back again. And you don't want to be the lender in that position if something would go bad. So your point of redundant cross-collateralization makes a whole lot of sense. And I don't think very many people even understand that can be done many times.
Yeah, well, you just again, you think about the context, right? You're always thinking about the context of the transaction. There's nothing wrong with doing a rehab, nothing at all. And obviously that's how you create additional value. But there is a time, exactly as you say, there's a time at which, you know, when you get the specs on the property, it's kind of like, okay, I can buy it for this. And if I put another 75,000 into it, I can rent it for this, and then eventually sell it for this. It's kind of like, got it, I get it. But in the meantime here, if something happens here, what I end up with, and a similar situation with another client of mine, where what they were dealing with was a contractor who defaulted.
Yeah.
And so you end up with, you know, what's my security? My security is a piece of property that's worth less, not only than what there was going to be, but it's worth less than the amount of money that I've actually loaned against that property.
Such an important point. Yes, thank you.
Okay, so, and then here's another one. This is the one that I was talking about before. So, you know, you looked at it, and what they've got is they have real estate in motion all the time. They have real estate in motion. So on an ongoing basis, they always have a capital need. So, and we have another, a capital provider who's a client. And the objective in that particular case was to say, hey, listen, I just want my money to be making more money than I could make with a 60 or 90-day CD. And as long as it's secure, I don't mind. I forgot exactly what the amount was, $1 million, let's say. I don't mind putting up the $1 million and to having that monthly payment come in of interest, because I'm going to just simply treat it like a depository account. As long as I'm secure, it's going to be a depository account. So in the meantime, I do need you to know, though, that when I want to get my money back, because I have a better offer, I want to be able to call the money in. So he said, great. And, you know, the opportunity, who has a lot of real estate in motion all the time, said, sure, let's do it. So it turned out to be just a moderate interest rate. I forgot, I think it was maybe 6%, 5%, 6%, but it was in effect for 60 days, 50% of the money was on call. And then at that point, it was additional notice. So they have to give back 50% within 60 days, and the other, so for the full 100% within the next 30 days. And in the meantime, in order to protect that, so they had talked about at the time this whole real estate and giving mortgages on that, but there were no mortgages. And so when I got involved, I said, okay, so what can we do to make sure? So we created some belt and suspenders in that particular case. There was also personal guarantees connected with that also, along with the collateral assignment of all of the secured interests in the specific properties, which they gave to the lender. So it was a great transaction. And since that time, they've done another transaction, you know, the relationship capital thing that we talked about before. Let me see if there's anything else. Oh, okay, two last ones. if that's okay.
Sure.
Those are all real estate. So this one was the purchase of a private mortgage. So what you had is you had a particular investor who had a mortgage, but needed capital because he was going to reinvest his capital in another deal. It was coming due in about 4 months, but he couldn't wait the 4 months. So he found another investor that was willing to put up the money. It was a 12% mortgage on the property. So this investor over here bought that mortgage at a discount to its face value, allowing him to earn a 20% yield on the transaction. So the note itself only offered 12%, but because of the discount, of course, the yield went up to 20%. So in that transaction, we had all of those loan documents, the secured promissory note, the mortgage, assignment, personal guarantee, written consent of the members. So it was a very solid loan, and it was a solid mortgage. It wasn't going anywhere. We reviewed the due diligence on the underlying properties of the mortgage itself. It was very solid. So that was secure. Ancillary credit enhancement, that was secured. And then the only issue is, okay, so how do I effectuate the deal? So you effectuate the deal with a mortgage purchase agreement, followed by the mortgage assignment itself, which is going to be, the mortgage purchase agreement doesn't get recorded in the public records. It's just the agreement. The mortgage assignment does get recorded in the public record. The bill of sale does get assigned. So you have a bill of sale assignment. And then you had the personal guarantee, in this case, not of the original borrower, because we already had that, but the guarantee of the assignor of the note. So there's a double personal guarantee involved in that particular. And since that time, that's been paid off. And again, we have 2 happy campers. Last one, David, and then
let me just, yeah, before you do that, I'm just, so I always love to like get the motivation. So the original owner of this secured promissory note of 1.5 million had a better opportunity, and that opportunity was now, and I think this note didn't pay off for 4 months. So he found somebody who would take this note, but rather than the face value of 12%, the assignor wanted 20%. So the original owner of the note was willing to sell it at enough of a discount to provide that 20% yield, which was, in this case, was about $28,000 discount on a $1.5 million note. Yeah. He was happy to do that because he saw another opportunity, and taking $25,000 little discount just to have the money today made a lot of sense for him, and still made a good deal for someone who was going to get 20% for, another 4 months or whatever it was.
Yeah, correct? And that's exactly right. I mean, if you think about it, the person who's buying the note buyer, who's the assignee, is going to be still getting the 12%. So they're getting 12% from the borrower. So the only thing that the assignor, the one who is selling the note, is going to be paying is the differential between the 1.5 million and what the actual discounted yield purchase price was, which was 1.471. Yeah. So it's like, $29,000 is what it was costing the one who was going to sell the note out. And obviously, he saw in this particular case, his application was he was going to get a whole lot more on where that money was headed than the final 12% that he was going to be losing, not even losing, but relinquishing the 12%, but it's only going to cost him $28,000 in the process.
And again, this goes back to what we said during this whole episode. It's about relationship capital. People believe many times that real estate is illiquid. Well, sometimes it is, but in many cases, it's really, you're lacking a network. You're lacking relationship capital. There's always people going different directions. And if you have that network, putting these kind of private transactions together are fun. They're, as you said, they're creative, and it helps people move to their real objectives in whatever their goals may be.
All right, last one. So the last one is actually fun too. So you had here's a situation, and we'll learn a little bit on it. Here's a piece of property that's worth 2.2 million. There is a $1.8 million mortgage on the property. However, they need $500,000. So rather than lending $500,000, In this situation, I used my own my own retirement account for this. I have a qualified retirement LLC, and what I did was I purchased for $500,000 a pro rata interest in that $1.8 million mortgage. So think of $500,000 as being the numerator and $1.8 million as being the denominator. And it comes out to roughly a 27% interest in that mortgage. But here's the rub. In this particular transaction, it's called the purchase of a partial on a mortgage. That $500,000 takes precedence as the first priority. So whereas the LTV, loan to value ratio, for 1.8 million over 2.2 is pretty high at an 82% LTV. But the investment to value of a $500,000 mortgage, partial, secured by 2.2 million is actually a 27% ITV, investment to value ratio. So offers huge security.
Yes.
And at the same time, it was nice 15% yield on this particular one. The documents that reflected that partial mortgage was a mortgage purchase agreement, just like the full purchase agreement, and the assignment of a partial mortgage, which is the one that actually gets recorded in the public records.
So real quickly again, given the motivation, somebody's holding a $1.8 million note and mortgage, but I'm assuming that they needed something like $500,000, and that fit the, and again, they had some use for that. They had the use for that money. They're willing to give you, in this case, a priority lien position. So as you said, your investment to value, very, very secure, and made something happen for the other party.
Yeah. In that particular case, by the way, David, in that particular case, it was simply they had a pain in the neck partner that they thought it was better to just buy him out.
Mm-hmm.
So I provided the $500,000 to buy the partner out.
There you go. Makes perfect sense. When there's a great enough need, we'll find ways to make that happen. And taking equity out of another asset to make that work is a great way to do it. Nobody had to go to a bank to try to make that happen, because a bank is not going to play ball. That's just not their criteria. They're not.
Yeah, that bank would not have given a loan against that mortgage.
No, just not there. Well, this is the world of private transactions, and Larry, that's what I want to do today, is just open the gate, open the door for people who really, so many people look at real estate, which we love alternative investments, but they see it with like one lens. Well, I got to buy a rental property, or I need to put my money in this syndication or fund. And yes, those are certainly can be viable means of investing in alternatives, no doubt about it. But the world of private transactions is it's another whole layer, and that's really the fun part. That's what I know you enjoy, and I enjoy it too. I enjoy seeing how we can creatively solve problems or challenges and create new opportunities that the rest of the world, the retail environment, can't do, because it's just not their world.
Right. It's wonderful to know that for those people who are you can invest in Apple stock, right? So you got stock and you have options and you have, how many securities do you have out there to buy?
Oh, yeah.
And you could probably go to to the Merrill Lynch's of the world, Charles Schwab's of the world, and you can get private syndications. I don't even know. But the bottom line is, this is also a whole nother world that actually gives you control over the strings of it, so that you get to be able to create the outcomes that you're looking for. And to really minimize the risk, precisely because you're in control of those strings. So, and it's, as you know, it's, for me, it's a delight. I mean, it's just plain fun.
Well, Dr. Larry Pino, it's always a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time today. You always lay out your presentation so well. You're not only very proficient in what you do, but you're also an excellent educator, and that's the world you live in. So thank you so much for being with us today. This will be a great episode. I know people will very much appreciate it.
Well, thank you, David. It's always great to spend time with you too. So all the best. Take care, and I'll see you soon.
Very good. Thank you.
Bye.
If you enjoyed watching or learning from this video, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel for more content. If you have a question about any of my content or this specific video, just please leave a comment down below. And as always, stay focused on your freedom. I'll see you next time.